And there's something rather nice too about it being sort of underneath this great big church. You don't get it on the top in the shiny surface of it all by the altar or where the great candle stands are. You have to actually go down underneath. And I think that that's quite a good symbol of uncovering the truth of Christmas underneath the glitter and the flutter of all the historical add-ons.
Many scholars believe the most far-reaching historical add-on may be the actual date for the celebration of Jesus' birthday.
The celebration of the birth of Jesus on the 25th of December is due purely to an arbitrary decision made by the Emperor Constantine. He wanted it to coincide with the feast, the pagan feast of the unconquered sun, the Sol Invictus.
This popular Roman festival in which light defeated darkness was chosen by the all-powerful Emperor Constantine as Christmas Day.
Christianity was replacing the pagan religion of the ancient world. It made a great deal of sense to link its great feasts into the feasts that were now being forbidden. So a midwinter festival, birth of Jesus, in northern hemisphere, the lovely symbolism of light in the darkness made sense, but there's absolutely no reason to think that Jesus was actually born in December.
So when was he actually born? No birth records were kept at the time, but is there anything in the story itself that might offer a clue?
We know quite a lot about Bethlehem 2,000 years ago because of the work done by archaeologists. The town of the 1st century BC and AD was a very small village. It would have been a village that farmed the big valley below it, but it was also just on the edge of the desert, which is poor land for farming, but excellent for pasturing sheep.
According to the story, shepherds were grazing their flocks at the time of year Jesus was born. But would they really have been out in the midwinter snow and rain, which is quite normal for Bethlehem?
Winter's quite cold in that part of the world, and you probably wouldn't be out in the fields quite at that time. There's a slightly stronger reason for thinking he was born in the spring. There would be a reason for keeping watch by night at that time of year. Because shepherds are out. Why are they out? Because there's lambing.
Whether he was born in spring or winter, Luke's gospel says frightened shepherds were told of the birth in an angelic visitation.
Did his message to the lowest stratums in society, the poor, the downcast, the people who had no political or religious influence. And so Jesus, who later in his life would reach out to the poor, as a baby reached out to the shepherds. So it's appropriate that shepherds would be the first to recognize the birth of the Good Shepherd.
Matthew's version of the story doesn't mention the shepherds, but he does add another group to the nativity scene. The wise men from the east traveling to Bethlehem to visit the baby Jesus, guided by a new star. The heavens were bubbling with activity at the time, but is there any evidence to support their improbable journey?
If you go back 2,000 years, then people didn't distinguish between astronomy and astrology. It was all part of the same thing. And people believed the stars were made for signs. That was their purpose in the sky. It was to tell us what the gods were doing, what was going to happen in the future.
There is astronomical evidence from the time that supports the appearance of a new star and other celestial activity that could have inspired the king's journey. But the same evidence suggests the traditional year of Jesus' birth might be wrong.
It all started in 7 BC when two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, came very, very close together in the sky. So when you looked at them, they almost appeared to be one stellar object. Saturn was over here, Jupiter over here, and then the next day they were a bit closer, the next day closer still, then closer still, then closer still, then closer still, until almost one planet, and that happened 3 times in 7 BC.
Astronomers of the time would have interpreted this in terms of astrology. To them, Saturn was the heavenly father, greatest of all the gods, and Jupiter was his son. Their coming together was the sign that a new son of God was to be born.
In 6 BC, another planet joined Saturn and Jupiter in the sky. This is Mars, and this indicated to them that the king that would be born would be a mighty king. Now they knew where this king would be born by their astrology, because the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, as it's called, this coming together, occurred against a backdrop of stars called Pisces. We still call it Pisces today. And Pisces in the sky represented Israel on earth. So what the wise men knew was that a mighty son of God would be born in Israel, but they didn't know when. In 5 BC, a really bright comet appeared in the sky. Now, a famous Egyptian astrologer called Ptolemy tells us if a comet appears in the east, it means the event's going to happen rapidly. If it appears in the west, it's delayed. And Matthew's Gospel tells us that the wise men saw his star in the east. And I believe they saw this comet in the east, and that meant the event was happening now. So that's how they knew when to go. They jumped on their camels and they headed off for Jerusalem.
He doesn't tell us that they are kings. He tells us that they are magi.
Magi is where we get the word magician from. It's a Persian word, so perhaps they came from the area of modern-day Iran or Iraq, known in ancient times as Mesopotamia, whose principal city was Babylon. The Babylonians were at the cutting edge of astrological science. They knew the skies better than anyone in the Middle East.